Hi, I'm Marcia Sofia Guadalientes, a speaker for the indigenous people. How can we preserve the culture of our indigenous people? In this generation, we are influenced by other countries or other people's culture, and by that, we are slowly forgetting the culture and the beauty of our indigenous people. However, is there ways or how can we preserve the culture of these people? According to the UNESCO, they stated that there are two approaches into preserving cultural heritage. One is to record it in tangible form and conserve it in an archive. And the other is to preserve it in a living form by ensuring its transmission to the next generations. Hence, there are ways to preserve these cultures. We can also support our indigenous people by focusing on the priorities, include indigenous people in discussions of land use, apply the laws to ensure land rights are protected, build public awareness, recognizing their role in conservation, bridge the gap between policy and practice. Encourage the state to fulfill wider rights. Don't speak for the indigenous people. And lastly, learn from stories of progress. In this sense, we as the fellow people of the indigenous people, we should be taking action on preserving the cultural practices of our indigenous people and supporting it before it's too late to make a decision or an action. Thank you.
Good morning everyone, my name is Erich Maydi Guevara and may I present to you my speech on how to preserve cultural practices of our indigenous people. Indigenous people are distinct social and cultural groups that share collective ancestral ties to the lands and natural resources where they live, occupy, or from which they have been displaced. In the Philippines, we have our own indigenous people. These are Igorot, Lumad, and Damangyan. People like them really help us a lot. Why? Because they help us protect our environment, fight climate change, and build resilience to natural disaster. In mountains, indigenous people system preserve oil, reduce erosion, conserve water, and reduce the risk of disasters. On the other hand, indigenous people have their own culture. Their culture is really different from us. However, to preserve their culture, we must appreciate those things that they did, especially those handicrafts and baskets that they made. If we buy those wooden furnitures, we help not only them but also our own nature. We should use furnitures than those plastic one. We should also not destroy indigenous peoples made in our nature, because some people destroy nature and also indigenous people's community by making them live and put establishments in their places. In this situation, they are destroying the right and dignity of indigenous people in their own home. So we see that indigenous people really help us and we must appreciate and preserve their culture. We should respect them because they own our country and our places. They build our nature and protect us. Indigenous people should be viewed as founding people of this land, not their slave. I hope all people will appreciate and respect their culture and not destroy it, because indigenous people is our treasure, a very big treasure. Thank you so much for listening and watching. Keep healthy and safe always, guys.
Ladies and gentlemen, before I start my speech, I would like to introduce myself. My name is Katrina Alexis Galinato Humangas. Today, we will talk about how to preserve cultural practice of our indigenous people. Before answering the question of how to preserve cultural practice, let us first answer this question. What is indigenous culture? Indigenous culture is what makes a description of we Filipinos. They're the ones who symbolize the diversity and the unity even though we have different beliefs. Some of us may not know this, but indigenous people are very important to our country because they are those people who live longer here. They are different, yet they still respect each of our different religions in order to preserve cultural practice of them. We need to value and respect their culture, like dances they share to public as a sign of religious devotion, preserving their cultural practice means we preserve our country's symbol of unity and respect to each other.